Christian parenting.
Understanding our own finances is hard enough, let alone knowing how to teach our children. The Family and Finances podcast hopes to take you from a place of stress, worry, and tension to a place of freedom, peace, and unity. If you're looking for peace of mind, contentment, and confidence in dealing with your finances, this is the podcast for you. And today we're going to talk about teaching our children financial lessons, what it means to be a biblical steward, something that really I would have to defer to you so much of it on because I felt like you were the expert on that topic. You took so much time and effort to help them in that area. At the same time, it was important to both of us because we felt there was a void in our upbringing, not to condemn our parents, but we just didn't really, maybe they did, we just didn't get it. We didn't go into our adulthood really knowing how to do money well. So we became pretty intentional about this topic.
Well, I think one thing I tried to emphasize the most was learning to do without. And that started early, when we'd go to the grocery store or any kind of store and the children wanted something. If they begged, I never gave in. Just never. If begging, no way.
Yeah, you didn't. We get asked a lot, particularly about what's age appropriate. And so people listening have children at different stages, and they may have them even adult children or grandchildren they're trying to help right now. It's not uncommon for us to get a call from somebody whose children are just financial disasters and they don't know how to undo that. There's a great verse, I think it's 3 John 1:4, that says, I have no greater joy than to see my children walking in the truth. And I totally agree with that. That's the heart's desire of every Christian parent. But I would add an addendum that you have no greater relief than to see them paying their own way.
Yeah.
And we always had a goal that one day our children would be able to take care of it themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's a great goal because once they're out of the home and they're no longer dependent on mom and dad, there's a lot of freedom in that.
Well, and when we're asked what age is appropriate, well, children are observing from early on. They're watching what you're doing with how you're paying, credit cards. Most children probably don't even realize what money is because they just see their parents use their credit cards. But the earlier the better.
I think the first lesson you established in our home was that no means no.
I tried to delay gratification, reward their waiting.
Well, delayed gratification is the key to managing money. Mm-hmm. And we wanted our children to know what that meant, and we may have overdone it. We taught them that when we said no, it meant no. There was no tree growing out in our backyard with money on it, and that there was a limitation to what we would be able to do, and that they were going to have to learn how to do money as well along this journey that we had been on. We didn't want them to repeat our mistakes.
No, we didn't. And I really tried to emphasize being content with what they had. We had, especially later in our marriage, you had been exposed to a lot of poverty overseas. And it was difficult to see American children with so much stuff, so I wanted ours to learn to just be content with what they had.
Well, we also emphasized allocation, which we had not really been taught, that everything that came to their hands would have to be allocated into the form of a spending plan, mm-hmm. or what we'd call a budget. And talk a little bit about the system you set up for them.
Well, I wanted them to learn to give first. So we came up with this binder idea. And is that what you want me to talk about, the binder? And these little pockets, the little zip pockets that you can buy at the store that kids put pencils in or, little supplies for school. So I bought 3 of those, put them in a binder for each child, and labeled them Give, Save, and Spend. And I told them they needed to learn to give 10%. So anytime they received any money, they put 10% of it in the giving pocket. 50% in their saving pocket and 40% for spending. And they did that for a long time.
Well, and the rule was it didn't matter if grandma gave them $100 for their birthday, it had to be allocated.
Mm-hmm.
And so nobody got to go out and just blow money. And if they worked, they had to allocate. If they had any kind of allowance, all of those things were to teach them that one day they would have to allocate their funds into a budget themselves. And so they needed to learn the discipline of doing that.
Well, and speaking of allowance, early on with our oldest boys, we just gave them an allowance. Never was a lot, but we just gave it, whether they didn't have to earn it. Later, with our younger two, we expected them to work.
Well, our rule was there are things that are common to having a home that somebody has to do, and they have to contribute. So we weren't going to pay them for things that just were necessary, like making their bed.
No.
You need to make your bed, whether it's my house or your house. That's just a part of living. And so that you didn't get an allowance for that. You didn't get an allowance for taking out the trash. You didn't get an allowance for helping with the dishes.
Now, I do think, if I recall correctly, that we started giving them a clothing allowance at 16.
Well, what we did is we said there are certain things that if you will do and contribute that are beyond the norm, then we'll pay you for that. And so, I've had yard work built in with these 4 boys for all these years. They got paid for helping with the yard. They get paid for raking with the leaves or cleaning out the garage or doing those kind of things. But it also came with responsibility that they had to also buy some of their own things with that money. Mm-hmm. It has never been a time where they could earn money and just go blow it.
No. I was encouraged one year when a man told us that he never spent any money that he was given. From a young age, his parents kept every financial gift and put it in a savings account for him. And I thought, wow, how wonderful that would have been.
Well, some people are frustrated with daily chores, and I know you got frustrated with that. So you created this little popsicle stick system. Mm-hmm. I can't even remember how it worked, but I remember seeing it. But tell us about that.
Well, I made it and had it hanging on the refrigerator, one for each boy, and they had little pockets. And they would move, when they did a chore, they'd move the popsicle stick from the to-do pocket to the done pocket. That worked for a year or two.
Well, and they didn't get their income if those things weren't done.
Right.
So if the popsicle sticks weren't moved over, which was visible to all of us, there was no financial reward.
Right. And that's real life. I mean, you've got to work to get paid.
Yeah. Besides allocation, I remember we wanted our boys to learn to work. Now, that was emphasized in our home, and I wanted it emphasized with our children, that they would one day be sort of work ready to be employed by somebody else. And so we did a lot of things to prepare them for that. I would put job wanted ads on the refrigerator. If I had something that was sort of over and above, I would see if the boys would apply for that job. Like, we did cutting trees and cutting firewood one year. The boys did that. We had a project to break up concrete. But I had to hire somebody to do it, so they had to apply for a job, which meant that they were learning to work for an outside employer.
Mm-hmm. Well, and all the boys had jobs outside the home, too, when they became teenagers. I remember taking our oldest, telling him to dress up. There was a caterer within walking distance from our home, and so we went over there and talked to him about an interview, and he got hired on the spot.
You also looked for internships and apprenticeships for our children. The woodworking, the guy who did woodworking.
Oh, yeah, for Luke, or for Todd, that's right. A friend's father had a woodworking shop on his property, and he offered to teach our son what he knew.
And woodworking stayed with him all of his life.
But Todd had to work for him, too, in his garden.
Yeah, in exchange for the apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I can think of a situation where sometimes I wanted the boys to work outside the home, so they weren't always under me. And I would have to go to someone that I knew and ask them if they would be interested in hiring one of my boys. And I have a friend who even went so far as to pay for the salary of their child to work under somebody else outside the home just to get the experience of having a boss.
Right. I think it's very important, if it's possible, to have them work where they can gain skills that will be used in their future. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's very hard today to say get them a job outside the home because the work environment can be really toxic. It can be dangerous. And so you have to teach them to work in an area where it's going to benefit them long term, what I call a resume building job, or you have to teach them to start a business and to be entrepreneurs. And our children, it's interesting, 2 of them have really never had formal sector jobs. I mean, other than just little temporary work your way through college kind of jobs. They've been totally independent and manage their own finances, manage their own income, and have done very, very well at that. And then, of course, we've got the 2 younger ones that are now coming along and being able to do that. When it came to cars, we made a decision to help them with the first car. And we look back, and I think we would probably do that a little bit differently.
I think that having them learn to save for a car, to be responsible for the insurance, is a big deal.
Well, one of our children wrecked his car that we had helped buy. And I remember I said, well, the second car's on you. And he was able to go out that very week and pay cash for his own car. And after he did that, which I was very proud of, he had money in his savings account to get his own car. I said, are you broke now? And he went back and looked in his 3-ring binder and came back and reported, absolutely not. I'm not broke. I've still got actually plenty of money. And so the system had really worked.
Yeah. One thing I think that I would love to have done different looking back is taught them to invest, because they accumulated a lot of savings, cash. But had we taught them how to buy stock or, to learn different investing tools, it would have been great.
Sometimes we're asked, did we shield our children from our financial challenges? And I would say, yes, we did. They didn't know the stress we were under, some of the mistakes we had made, some of the difficulties we were having. But we didn't waste it. We didn't sort of drag them into it. There wasn't drama around those issues. But we also used it to point out to them, there's a better way. And we really want you to know this better way.
Well, yes. I think the hardest times were when our oldest 2 were young. And then we learned things along the way that we tried to implement with our young ones now.
Well, everyone has a different personality.
Yes.
And a different bent. And we have one that's more given towards spending. And just recently, you tried something new to try to get their attention on their spending habits.
Well, yes. Got him a little notebook, told him to divide it into 3 sections: income, spending, and sacrifices, just to try to get him more aware of not spending and recording, things like that he could pass up, like not stopping to buy fast food when he's hungry. Write it down, and come home and eat. Just make him aware of how much he was spending.
And how important it is to say no to yourself.
Right.
And I read a study years ago, I think it was by Duke or North Carolina, of some of the highest achieving alumni of the business school. And they looked for the lowest common denominator. Was it their grades? Was it their SAT entrance score? Was it their extracurricular activities? And what they found is the lowest common denominator of all the high achieving alumni from the business school was that all worked outside the home by the time they were 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so the ability to integrate into the workforce and have experience and knowledge and to know how to get along with people was the best predictor of future success in their top alumni. And, I look back on that and I think that's so interesting because That's when I started working outside the home. Not that I've been a high achiever, but I had a job when I was 13 for a boss. I worked at an amusement park, and I actually, got myself to the job and logged in on a clock and had to take orders. And we tried to teach that to our children and get them ready. I remember one of our children got a job outside the home. I think he was 18, and the boss called me and said, "I don't know what you've done, but you've done it right, because this is one of the best employees of an 18-year-old I've ever had."
Hmm.
We get also asked sometimes about, what do we do when children earn their own money outside the home? Should they contribute to the home expenses? And the way we've always managed that is we just push things to them that they need to buy with their own money. And that's one way of contributing. Am I going to ask them to pay the bills? No. Am I going to ask them to pay a portion of the rent? No. But with one of our children now, what we've done has been working pretty well so far, is we've said, you've got a car, you've got a mobile phone, you've got insurance, you've got, a pretty nice setup while you're in college. We would like you to start to pay that yourself. And he's able to do that.
He's living at home.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So essentially he's getting free rent, but he's contributing to the overall cost by paying his own bills. And for him, it's about $350 a month.
So he's basically working it off around the house.
He has to either work it off in hours around the house or earn it outside the home, so that he's ready once he's through college to pay his own way.
Well, and sometimes we're asked, should they contribute, because there is a need in the home. And I think everybody's circumstance is different. And I think you have to look at the child's heart. If a child wants to contribute, then don't deny them. That's God will work through each child and each family in different ways. But
one of my friends tells a story of living in a single parent home. And by the time he was 15, he was contributing to the monthly needs of the family just to have rent and groceries, and went on to become a very successful entrepreneur because he was used to that responsibility. He was used to, from a young person, having to bear that weight in their life. I think our tendency in this culture is to shield them from responsibility and to not give them enough and to trust them with what they're able to really do.
Well, and I think there's also a desire not to reveal for embarrassment reasons. You don't want your, other people to know you can't afford a birthday gift or wedding gift or whatever. So you don't want your kids to even know.
One of the big rules for us is we wanted our children, if they chose to go to college, that we weren't going to have any student debt. We just said that up front. And so that meant a couple of choices. Number one, we wanted them to get scholarships. So they had to work hard on their grades and be prepared to apply for scholarships. Number two, they might have to work during school and contribute to some of their own expenses, which surveys show that they do much better in school when they have a job versus just goofing around. And so we said, we don't want you to borrow for a student loan, and we're not going to borrow for a student loan. And that's actually worked out really well for all of our children.
We never put money in a 529 plan.
One of the reasons we did that is we felt like it might be restrictive if the children decided not to go to school and wanted to start a business or go to a trade school or do something other than traditional education route. We saved and we were prepared for it, but we didn't take advantage of that 529 plan. And I would say you need to be pretty sure that your child is going to go into a traditional academic route and that there's enough tax saving benefit in your state or in your circumstance to warrant setting it aside just for that purpose. Another issue I think families are facing today is not just dealing with their own children, but now with their parents. By the way, did you see the headline? Right now, more adult children are living at home than during the Great Depression. There's more children back at home. So this idea of the sandwich generation is a very real thing.
Right, and it puts a lot of pressure on the ones in the middle. If you've got a husband and wife taking care of children and parents at the same time, it's a lot of stress.
What were the ladies talking about at the Bible study the other day? The granny hut or the mom-in-law apartment or something?
A pod or
The
something.
pod, yeah, they're putting these in the backyard now for
Mhm.
the parents who are moving home. It's
Mhm.
becoming a real thing where people are adding that to their home.
Yeah. Just so that their parents have space, their own space. It gives them some dignity, but it also sets up some boundaries.
Well, I've seen that work in a beautiful way. We've had a number of friends who've been sandwiched, kids at home while the parents moved back. And every one of them have had two things they've shared with us. Number one, it was hard. It was awkward at times, and just having privacy and some of the interferences. But long term, every one of them said it was beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
and they would do it all again.
Mm-hmm.
And they miss their parents now that they're not living there.
Right. And the children benefit from the grandparents benefit from the children. It's just not been culturally done here. It is all over the world, but
Yeah.
not so much here.
Most other cultures, it's normal to live generationally together. I think it's important to set up financial expectations, even to the point of having a contract of what's their part, what's your part. One couple we talked to basically looked at their home as an apartment that their parents were renting. And their parents found it to be less expensive than assisted living or any kind of senior care. And so they were happy to pay it. And they essentially contributed most of their Social Security income to that contract, which allowed the owner of the home, the person in the middle, to manage that money on their behalf. It worked out really well.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that's very important is if you have parents living with you and they're not in good health, is that you seek help. That you let your church, your small group or Bible study, neighbors know what the situation is so that they can help you. Because it's easy to get burned out when you're taking care of sick people and trying to work and take care of children.
Yeah, you have to have your own space, your privacy, and the ability to get away and to rejuvenate.
And it's an opportunity for those of us who don't live in that situation to help others, to be more aware and compassionate, take a meal, offer to help, babysit, drive the parents, whatever.
If you teach your children to understand the principle of scarcity, that you have to be a good manager of whatever you have, be very faithful with that, and to really honor God by being givers, as you said, was our first priority. And then you teach them to allocate and you teach them to work. You're going to be better off than most of the people who are trying to figure this out. Just those three basic principles have paid such great dividends in our lives and our children's lives.
Right. Yeah, I think one thing looking back that I did, I was really too generous in some areas. One was at Christmas, we'd give the kids money to spend on gifts. Well, looking back, had they known that they were going to buy their own gifts, they would have saved up for that. Or they might not have gone out and bought just whatever they wanted. They would have been more thoughtful, and used their money differently than ours.
I think we started to realize how much materialism we had sort of supported, and we wanted to pull back on that. And over the years, I've seen us become much more, not necessarily frugal, but much more careful and intentional about what we do at Christmas, even minimizing how much money has gone in, just into plastic toys and sort of the disposable, gift kind of thinking that we used to do. We've raised two sets of children. Two were born in our 20s, two in our 40s. So we've had a chance to sort of do a reset. I get asked a lot, what are you doing differently with the second set than you did with the first set? And I always say the same thing. I don't know what you would say, Ann, but I say I'm just making different mistakes.
And I'm moving slower.
They bring us great joy, but each child is different, and each thing we do as parents is always somewhat experimental. There are no guarantees. I would say one of my big lessons in life is there's not a formula.
No, there's not. I do think it's very important that we expose them to poverty. I remember one time we took the boys to serve food at a homeless shelter. Do you remember this? We got there early, helped prepare the food. The people came through the line.
Were these
and
older boys or the
the younger boys.
Okay.
And afterwards we were told to go ahead and get some food and sit with them. So the youngest one, we sat down with some people and started chatting, and he leaned over and whispered, "When are the poor people going to come in?" And he missed it completely. They'd already come through, and we were sitting there talking with them.
I don't remember that.
Oh, it was precious. But I think we need to be intentional about giving, whether that's having them go through their toys and pick out things that they can share, their clothes, in addition to money.
Yeah, big givers.
Yes.
We took the children on lots of trips with us.
Mhm.
We paid for that, and that's a great education. It's a great way to learn about the world. They should be good in geography, for one thing, just knowing where places are, but also expose them to other cultures and other ways of living. When I talk to our younger boys about their favorite memories, most of them will say that 3 weeks we spent living in a one-room apartment, I guess two-room apartment.
2 bedrooms, yeah.
Two-bedroom
1
apartment
bath.
in Malawi.
Mm-hmm.
We were just piled in on top of each other and living very, very simply for 3 weeks. And it looked like it would have been a sacrifice to them, no big entertainment, nothing, to keep them busy. They loved the simplicity of it and the community of it. And it taught them that they can be content with far less than they have now.
Oh, it was a wonderful experience. They had limited food, and
Right.
I don't think they ate out the entire time we were staying in Malawi.
And they never felt like they got enough at the meals that were served, because it was pretty lean times right then. I think we had quite a few meals with no meat.
Yeah, but it was wonderful. They had such a good time.
Yeah. What else would you do differently, Ann, if someone asked you, we've raised 4 boys, they're grown now. What is it that we would do that would help them the most?
I think showing them where money goes. I don't think we spend enough time showing them, okay, this amount of money goes towards food, actually going through a budget with them. I think we could have been much more intentional about teaching them. So for one thing, they'd understand, well, yeah, you can't, that's why we can't buy just everything you want.
Yeah, I think when I think about it, what you wish you had done differently, you can make a long list. I think there's a lot of guilt in parents today, and a lot of things that they want to relive, and you can't do that. I try to live grateful for what they did learn, and I'm proud of the children. I'm proud that they've made their own way and done well with their finances so far. They've all done really well. We've got a few question marks left, but I would say, teaching them, I would want to teach them to rely on God in the hard times more than I think I was able to express to them. That's what we had to learn to do. And remember the movie Mama's Purse? Is that what it's called?
Mama's Bank Account.
Mama's Bank Account. That message, I don't think I expressed well enough as, the father in our home. But share that story, what the point of that movie. She was in the Depression, and she didn't have any money.
Oh, I think she shielded her children.
She pretended
she had an account at the bank.
And she always said, well, if we're going to do that, Mama's going to have to go drain my bank account. And they would say, no, Mom, we'll work and we'll get that money together. You don't have to do that. And they would pull it off, and it would come through. And at the end, they found out that their mother never had that bank account.
Right.
But the point there is we have a God to rely on that supplies our needs, even when we don't have it, even when we might have felt desperate and alone and hurting ourselves. God was so faithful. And I don't think I expressed to the children deeply enough the joy and benefit of trusting God through the hard times.
Right. And I think one thing I would do differently is, instead of buying things for them, that would get tossed in a toy box, would just have emphasized time together, just having fun.
Yeah, experiences.
go to the park and play, go different places, or just play.
Well, it reminds me, I got a call from I guess a grandparent. No, we were on our walk and a grandparent said, "Hey,
Oh,
Chuck,
yeah.
you know about money. I'm opening an investment account for my grandchildren.
Mhm.
Where should I put it?" And the light bulb went off for us. What a great idea. What if we'd started that for each of the children where we were investing and they were matching some investment that was growing over
Mhm.
time, where they would be today versus just spending money for, nonsense.
Yes, they're going to start doing that for each of their grandchildren's birthdays
Mhm.
from now on. Instead of buying
Stuff.
they're
Yeah.
buying stock.
They're buying stock and not stuff. That's a good way to end this, isn't it?
Mhm.
Invest in the eternal. Invest in the fact that God takes seriously our stewardship of money and help them to understand that. Do the best you can. Some are going to receive it and some are not.
Right.
There are no formulas. There's no reason to beat yourself up for the mistakes, and to just rejoice when they do figure out how to do it. And I think, and my estimate is all four of the boys are going to do it better than we did.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope they never went to bed at night wishing they had more. I hope they were happy and content with what they had.
Well, thanks for sharing all of your knowledge today, Ann. I hope that we've encouraged people. It's so easy to worry about the future, especially when we think about the next generation and all the myriad of challenges that they're going to face. There's a labyrinth of things to worry about in today's world. But the Bible makes it clear just to be faithful with what you want to teach them right now, what's in front of you. Do the best you can as a parent. Love them, be filled with grace. I look back and my regret was just being too legalistic. Just show them grace and love, mercy, and just keep teaching them the principles. And the Bible promises that one day they'll fall back and rely on those things that have been poured into their little hearts and minds.
Right. And be willing to say you're sorry. Because we make mistakes. Let them know we're sorry.
Over and over and over. Well, thanks for sharing about that today. And I look forward to next time. We're going to talk about creating a unified financial plan, getting on the same page as husband and wife, and setting some financial goals so that you can make real progress.
Okay, that's an important one.
See you then.
All righty.